This is the Real Estate Foundation, your show for massive action with proven results. Raise your life and your legacy with real estate.
Are you ready to take your multifamily game to the next level? Well, you need to join us October 12th, Saturday, October 12th, for our one-day multifamily foundation workshop. We're going to bring it to you live. We got a list of 15 speakers. They're going to go through the process of everything it takes to get your mind right, get the deal right, learn the terms, understand the markets, learn how to find the deals, learn how to underwrite the deals, learn how to put your team together, everything from property managers to brokers to insurance companies. Beyond that, what's the proper way to raise funds for a deal and how to close a deal and what to do after you take over a deal. So it's going to be a huge event. It's going to be awesome for you to join us. Got a great space. It's going to be here in New Jersey, in Springfield, New Jersey. Of course, it's going to be a one-day event, but we got everything packed in from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Right now, if you put in the code workshop, you're going to get a special discount. And again, that code is workshop. You need to go to multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com. Again, www.multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com, and go fast because we've sold a ton of tickets for this. I actually was able to get a bigger room, but that's filling up quickly as well. So again, www.multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com, put in the code workshop. There we go. Got that down. And look forward to seeing you so we can all take massive action together. Podcast. Thanks for checking back in with us. Super excited to have you. And of course, if you like what you hear, go give us a ratings and review. It doesn't matter the rating. We just want to hear from you. We want to know what's working, what really stands out from you, and what we can do better to bring you more value and more awesome content. But we know we have that today. We are super excited for today's guest, Agostino Pintus. Hey, Agostino, how are you?
Man, I'm awesome. I'm just phenomenal. How you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome. And we had a just super awesome talk on your podcast yesterday. So I appreciate you having me on. That was awesome. We talked about everything from, mindset to business to fitness. And it was just full of really awesome stuff.
Really good
of course,
stuff.
Yeah. The Bulletproof Multifamily Mindset Show is where you're going to find that there. The podcast, Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. So that's come out. Dive in there. He's got some awesome content, but a bit more about Agostino. He's a multifamily investor, syndicator, and entrepreneur with more than 15 years of experience in real estate. He currently oversees strategic partnerships, capital development, and platform development for Realty Dynamics Equity Partners, an investment firm specializing in multifamily acquisition and asset management services. So, Agostino, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, man. Yeah, absolutely. This is so much fun.
Well, I know about you, but for listeners out there who are like, well, that sounds awesome. Tell us more about you. Tell us more about who you are, what you're doing, and then we're going to dive in because you just have an incredible story.
Yeah, well, just like you pointed out, my journey of real estate started just over 15 years ago, and I think the most relevant time was when I really hit rock bottom. I was living in Florida at the time, and I got home from a consulting gig. I was doing IT consulting. I picked up this gig after this economic crash. I get to the front door of the home that I was renting. I step inside, everything's dark, flip on the light switch and there's no lights. And that's when I get this sinking feeling in my stomach. And I knew why I was standing in darkness. And it was because I didn't have enough money to pay the electric bill. It was at that point, I felt like an absolute failure. So leading up to that point, I was a C-level executive running these large enterprise IT groups for publicly traded companies, managed very large budgets, did a great deal of success, helped this company really grow and go public. And it was just a phenomenal time. And it's very hard to figure out, like, what did I do in my life to get to a point where I can't even afford the electric bill? So I was just frustrated. I was alone, gone through a divorce. So I was like, it was really, really bad. It's probably one of the darkest moments of my life. But that's when I had to make a decision. That's ultimately what it was, a decision that I can't let this ever happen to me again. This is a case where you're so devastated that you have to make a choice of, okay, what am I going to do next? Can I really make this happen to me again?
Yeah, and I love that. And so it happens to a lot, right? Because you have your identity, and your identity is, of course, your job, your marriage, all these things that are happening in your life, and then it transitions. And without that identity that you knew, it's almost so much harder to pivot. What was it that stood out? You said, okay, this is it. I'm changing it. You have the lights go out. What was that next step? What did you do to change your outcome?
Well, I knew that. It's funny. The mindset is everything, right? What you think you become. And it sounds like a cheesy phrase you might see on your memes on Instagram or whatever, but it is 100% the case, absolutely. So I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. Even though I'd been doing real estate, I still had some single family homes, and after the economic crash, it's very hard to get things to cash flow properly because of just what the rents were, and you keep ratcheting them down just to break even. You had all that to deal with, or when you're through an economic cycle. But it was getting the mindset fixed, and what I mean is, I had to really expand my mind. So even after that scenario, I decided to put my big boy pants on and go to refocus my career, take another job that had paid me a lot more money, and get out of that whole scenario and really decide, what am I going to do next? So I was still working as a CIO. And you know what? It was one of those cases where I really had to study and train. That's probably the biggest hurdle that many people have, is they don't understand how to do it, and so they get stuck in a cycle. I want to do multifamily, but I don't know how. I studied on my own. I didn't take on a mentor. Things would have been a lot faster had I done that. It was really training, studying everything I can get my hands on when it came to real estate, and making a decision to actually do it. But even aside from the training and the studying, I also studied psychology, studied the 25 cognitive biases, why people do what they do, emotional intelligence, all these things that we don't think of as far as real estate is concerned. But in this business is a people business. It relies heavily on people and relationships. If you can't do that, if you can't talk to people, you're done. It doesn't matter how much you know about putting a deal together. If you can't go raise money, if you can't talk to that broker, if you can't hire on a good property manager to manage your deal and then properly manage the property manager, you will lose. So I had to learn all these things, so right from scratch.
So, it's so well said, right? Everybody gets so comfortable. And so we have our meetup last night, and it wasn't meant to come out mean, but the emphasis of my talk was, listen, we want you here to be productive. If you're going to come here for 10, 11 meetups and not take action, it's the same as not coming. So you might as well not come, because you're really not getting anything done. You're just coming, wasting 2 hours of your life, just hearing information, but the information's worthless. It's almost like if you were just hearing static, because you're doing the same with it.
We were talking about that yesterday. And even after that call, I'm thinking to myself, man, I wonder if we were really, really harsh on the listeners. Yeah. The listeners who listen to this, is they're going to be like, man, these guys are hardcore. But you know what though? That's the thing. When everything lines up, and by everything I mean, what is the long-term goal that you see for yourself? Where do you want to be when you're 60, for instance? And you work your way back. You have to attack that goal relentlessly. You cannot deviate. You cannot say, well, you know what? I'd like to be a multifamily guy, but I'm going to open up this ice cream stand first. It's just ridiculous. It requires a hardcore focus. And I think that people underestimate that when we fall into the lull of the 40-hour job with the paycheck. And every Friday we're like, okay, where's that paycheck at? I got to have that paycheck. And we get lulled into that false sense of security. And you know what, folks? There is no security. Someone else is pulling the strings and then making a decision if you're going to have a job there next week. It's happening right now. Right now it's happening out there.
Yeah, it's that common, you're either going away from pain or towards pleasure is when it really happens. And for this, people right now are maybe just feeling that little finger in their side, and it doesn't get to them that much. Maybe they'll sit there and they want to do real estate, but they don't have that pain point there to know until maybe we have this, this correction and jobs are taken away again, because really, is the security in the job, or is the security in really being able to control your future? And you've taken the steps to say, it's in control of my future. So these are the steps I'm going to do. So give us the roadmap. And of course, everybody has their own roadmap, but what were those steps to really take your future back?
Well, after that scene in Florida where I knew I had to do something. And even though I had done real estate, up until that point, but I was doing like small single family, small multifamily, stuff like that. I still thought that, you know what, I can't let this happen to me again. I need to get my whole job situation back together, and I need to do something. That's the thing though too. It was something. It was not, I have to do real estate. I had to do something, right? So I took on other jobs, C-level executives, making bank. At that point, the economy was doing better, but I knew that I was still vulnerable. Meaning that at any given time, even though I'm a C-level executive making a few hundred grand a year, I could still get that taken away from me. And everyone that relies on me, like I have a son, if something happens to me, he doesn't eat. That's a problem, right? But you know what? It was say about 3 years ago, well, actually a little longer than that, where I was working with a group out of Indianapolis. The president of the company hired me on 4 years ago, and I go in there, fix the whole company up. It was a complete mess. Ran IT properly, got them back to productivity, and helped drive profits. Well, he got upset, but for whatever reason, and he left the company. So a new CEO comes in. So I don't know if you know any of how corporate America works, but when a new CEO comes in, he gets rid of all the C-level executives and he brings in his own guys. That's typically what happens, and that's what happened to me. So here I am, round 2, right? And I at that point, this is part of the problem, what I just described. I was earning bank, man. I was making tons of money. Single dude, by himself, nice house, fast cars. I had it all, chilling, right? I wasn't in pain. I was looking at big multifamily. I was looking at it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I wonder why that deal is for sale. It looks like a pretty interesting deal. It's all right. I'm gonna go buy this Viper.
Yeah, got it.
That's way easier than trying to figure this out.
Yep.
And then this, so here I am at this company. New CEO comes in, literally 2 weeks later. They say, okay, pack up your stuff, get out. So here I am in my mid 40s, wondering, okay, how many more times can I do this to myself? Right? Here I am in my mid 40s. Without a job, but fortunately I socked money away, so I had savings. I wasn't as nearly bad a shape as it was before, but still I was vulnerable. And again, the big part of it was that goal. I forgot that goal. That goal came out of focus, and it just became day by day by day by day. And that's how most people live, right? Day by day. They take it on as it comes up, right? The most successful people have those goals established. They write them down and they follow them every single day. I stopped doing that. I was doing it, then I stopped. And once I stopped, I fell off the rails. After that whole thing, getting canned out of that place was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. Because just like I said, it was uncomfortable now. It's like, crap, now what am I going to do? So I took some time. I reflected. I thought about what I'm going to do next. Talked to an attorney friend of mine, gave me more details about what syndication was all about. As soon as I heard it, I'm like, you know what? That's what's up. I will dedicate my life to that, because to get to my goal of 3,000 units, $1 billion in assets, it requires a high degree of focus. It is, guys, it is not easy. It's fun, but it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And I think that's what scares a lot of people, is that it's not a simple thing to do. But go ahead.
No, so the point's so well said there, right? It's not easy. And for that, it takes that point where it takes a special person who's ready for it to make that their goal and their future, right? Because you say this, but it's done already. Your goal is 3,000 units, but 1 billion, but in your mind, it's done. Now it's just you putting in the time and the process to get there. Yeah. And so that is what it's taken for, your years to where you are, in your mid 40s, saying, here I go again. I've just let myself lose track of my goal. No more. Now I'm ready. I'm ready because the goal is there, and my mind and my body is ready for it.
That's right.
What is that? timeline look for? And because there's no perfect timelines, you'll have people ask, so how long does it take to get a deal, or what does it take? Because they're looking for that easy route. What was the process for you to get that first large multifamily? Like, talk to us about that
Sure.
property.
The first bigger multifamily I did was only 12 units, but I bought that on my own. No partners, no syndication, no nothing. And the way I figured was I needed to demonstrate that I'm serious about doing this, right? So after I left that company, I took some time off. It took like 3 months, right, to really reflect, think, plan, decide what's gonna happen next, right? So just 3 months. I created my vision board. I wrote out my affirmations, detailed affirmations, which is probably one of the biggest problems that many people have, is they just say, I'm going to be rich. No, I will have 12,000 units. I will have $200,000 a month. I will have, you're writing all this out like it's present time, and you're writing detail. People don't do that. That has to be done. And put a time limit to it too. People don't do that. So it's kind of like I refocused all that. It took me 3 months to do all that. Right after I did that, I studied the markets, and I discovered that Ohio was the place to be. So I was living in one of my rentals near the beach in Virginia Beach, and prior to that, I started selling off everything. So sold everything, and that was the last place I sold. And then I came out to Ohio, and picked up a consulting gig while I learned the market and figures things out here, right? Because I'd never been to Ohio. All I had was the data to show that this is the place to buy stuff, right? And I mean, and that's the thing. Again, once I made that decision, it could have been anywhere. If the data told me Florida, I would have packed up my stuff and went to Florida. It just happened to be Ohio. So I ended up here, found a 12 unit, bought it myself, own money, took it down, right? After that, I found a 56 unit. And as soon as I locked that sucker up, sight unseen, didn't even saw it, locked it up. I saw that because I know the data. I analyzed data. I knew that the cost per door was good. I knew that the income was good, only because the property manager from the first deal was managing that deal. So I trusted the property manager. I got to know him a little bit, and so I said, "Are these for real? These numbers?" He assured me that they were. Once I locked it up, I started making the phone calls. Got another GP. We raised the money, locked up. We raised the money for that deal in 11 hours.
How cool is that?
It was $500,000. We raised it in 11 hours, man. It was crazy.
Well, and you say sight unseen, but you'd already done the groundwork. You've built out the team. You had the property manager there, so you were prepared for it, and you had all the guidance you needed. And it's funny because when you have people on the show, it's the people who are successful. They set quantifiable, actionable goals with a timeline involved there, and that's exactly what you do. Because just like you said, like, I want to be rich. Well, what does that mean? Like, because if you and I both say that, that's a different conversation. I have what my rich would look like. You have your rich would look like. Some people, you say, I want to be rich. That could mean that they stop living paycheck to paycheck, and they have 6 months of reserves. For other people, they may need $10 million, or the next person, rich means that they could not work at all and be with their family. So everybody's going to have a different rich. So setting those quantifiable, actionable goals that are there is one step, but giving yourself a timeline, right? Because we could say, I want to be rich, but is that me in a year? Is that me in a decade? Is that me by the time I die? What is it?
Right. And you know what though? And Jason, I'll even say this, that aside from writing out these goals, and I'm not just saying, like, if someone out there is listening to this and they're like, they can't even imagine owning 100 units, right? Write these goals out like they're freaking crazy. 12,000 units. And you're like, how the hell am I going to get to 12,000 units? Well, the way you get to 12,000 units is to hang around with people that are on their way to 12,000 units. My friends have 4,000 units, 6,000 units, 8,000 units. These are my buddies. These are the guys that I'm hanging with now, right? So it doesn't, 12,000 doesn't seem so far away anymore, right? Because your friends are in the same circle. Now, someone who's starting out obviously is not going to have access to those sorts of people, but once you really start the networking aspects, you goal set, you even if you take down little deal, even on your own, if you have the means, or you take it down with partners or with another syndicator, it gets you in the game. You got to get in the game. It'll never happen on its own. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things is I think they're just afraid to take that massive action. They're afraid that whatever it is, it's not going to work. And guys, I'm telling you right now, fear will get you nowhere. All it's going to leave you is with regret. And that's one way you can't live your life. Can't live your life with regret.
I love that. It's like, I always like to equate it some way to like lifting, but like if your ultimate goal is to bench a certain weight, you're not going to do that tomorrow. But if you start putting on heavier weights and doing negatives and have spotters just so your body can get accustomed to that heavier weight, instead of it being shock and awe every time you put on a new weight, well, your body ultimately lines up and says, okay, I'm ready for that. Well, your mind, you're doing the same thing, right? You're setting your mind up to know that that's coming. So it's not such a foreign thing. Like, 100 units sounds just gargantuan, but when you size it up and you start thinking about, okay, 100 units, what does that take? What kind of money do I need to raise? What kind of team do I have around me? What kind of timeline do I have? What terms do I know? Who do I have to put in there? Well, then it's not so scary because you've set up all the steps to really put a process to the madness.
Yeah. And then when this is going to sound awful to say, once you take down enough of these deals, you start getting embarrassed that you just closed a $3 million deal. Right. I get embarrassed. It sounds like a dick thing to say, but it's true. It's like, we just closed this $3 million deal. It's like, oh man.
Well, part of it is because what's funny is because we did a smaller deal recently because it was just a home run of a deal, but the work to do, a 10 unit to a 100 unit to a 300 unit, it's really the same work. Yeah. It's not like, oh, it's 300 units, it's 300 times harder. No, it's pretty much the same work. It's
pretty much the same work. Yeah. But you know what though? I'll tell you what though, it's because the think now compared to even when I started all this, the think now is so big that it's like, to me, it's tiny. It's small potatoes, So getting that thing, getting into that right mindset, that's what changes everything. When you change your perspective. And again, unfortunately, it doesn't happen tomorrow. It's what you said. You have to bring out that comfort zone. But for me, it took. You mentioned timeline. It took tons of reading, tons of books, tons of studying, getting out of that comfort level. I'll put it this way. I was listening to a complete audiobook in 4 days, a complete audiobook, right? Even less if I were able to do it. I'm just compressing all this information into my head as fast as I can consume it. That's very uncomfortable. People don't like doing that kind of stuff, or they're not capable of doing it. Unfortunately, I'm able to do it, but people out there can do it. It is possible. It's not easy, but it's doable. And how bad do you want it? That's ultimately what it is. The first question I ask in my coaching is, what's your why? Why are you even doing this in the first place? Because if your why isn't big enough, you're gonna stop doing this thing, in 4 weeks.
Yeah, you cracked me up because Pili, when we ride together, like I like to listen to Audible 2 times, and she hates that. So she's like, it just sounds like people are just going blah 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 blah, and like I'm like, no, I can get the book done twice as quick. And then I realized that if you get YouTube can go 2.5 and 3 times. Like, well, if I can keep up, as long as it's not like a New York talker, I can keep up with this. I'm like, well, that's sweet. I'm doing 30 minutes in 10 minutes. How bad is that? How much more content can you consume where I'm not wasting time trying to track out 30 minutes because we're never getting back time, right? So your stories here is awesome. We got a new segment here. We're gonna just do a couple snap question sections here, and you're gonna throw you into the fire. You're gonna be the guinea pig. So I'm sorry to put that on you here. But all right. What's the best piece of advice you've been given that still stands with you today?
Your expense ratio is never 50%.
Super good. Super good. I see.
Multifamily anyway.
Yeah, it's super good. I see that constantly. What's a talent you wish you possess?
Yeah, talent I wish I possessed. Wow. No one's ever asked me that. That's a good-looking question. I would say a talent I wish I possessed was the ability to read even faster.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. What is a skill set you're working on improving right now? Besides the reading, of course.
One of the things that you can never be too good at is raising money. It doesn't matter how good you are. Your ability to raise money is absolutely critical to scaling your business, because once you're able to not only raise the money but also perform, right, which is just as important, obviously. you're limitless. You can help. You're delivering a return to the investors, and you're able to build something that'll be hopefully really big, and then ultimately stand the test of time, which is what I'm going after. I want legacy.
What's a traction tip that you use to get your time back on track?
What I'm sorry, what do I?
So generally a lot of it with so much with social media and so many other things happening.
Yeah.
How do you get your time back? What do you do to recalibrate and refocus?
Wow. I would say that I try to turn off I try to close the browser windows whenever I can. I try to, which is tough to do. We've been very active on social media. So of course social media is designed to be very engaging to people, right? Which is very difficult to overcome, because our biological brains want to pick up on that and just start clicking the buttons. Because it's what we do, right? So part of it is just avoiding those temptations and just keep them away from me, right? I try to stay very precise with my time as best I can. Schedule meetings accordingly. It's like maybe one cafe, but schedule four in-person meetings back to back. That way, it saves time. Because just like you pointed out, which is beautiful, you can always get back more money. You can never get back more time.
Absolutely. What's a lesson you learned either by someone else in multifamily or for what you're doing that's really shaped who you are in your multifamily business?
Wow. It's going to sound terrible, man.
The truth is where the gems are.
You can never trust what the seller is saying.
True. And I'll piggyback that with, it's not because the seller is ultimately always trying to be deceiving, but sometimes they just don't know. If they're running the property themselves, they're not thinking about doing accounting or admin or all these other costs that go in there, and they're doing their own property management, their own turns. Well, they may be missing that off your P&L or your T12, not maliciously. It's not like they're trying to. They just they don't they just don't put it on because they're like, oh, well, I did that. I didn't even think to put on snow removal because I'm doing it.
Exactly.
So,
there's that, but there is something else too. Is that in the majority of the deals that we've done, whenever we looked at the property, it would be over 90% occupancy. And by the time we close, so you figure, 30-day due diligence and then a 45-day to close for financing, yada, yada, yada. By the time we get to closing, now occupancies drop to like 82% or some ridiculousness, right? Why? Because the seller has decided, I'm not putting any more money into this thing. I'm done. Mm-hmm. So when that happens more often than not. So for the listeners out there, make sure you build in protections for that, to say something like, if all the units are not rent ready, there's some sort of penalty. It has to have some bite. Most attorneys, my attorney friend will put in like a $500 fine or whatever. I put $2,000 in mine. And see if they come back with anything. But just because, again, it's, when we're going to look at an asset, we're looking at the asset as it is today. This is correct. What we're buying, right? We're not buying an asset that's missing a ceiling and have no floor, which actually happened, by the way. There's right after we closed. Yeah, the ceiling is gone. All I see is the rafters. That's a real thing. That actually happened. Yeah.
Wait, what's your greatest tip for success for the listeners?
You got to get your mind right. Listen to as many books as you possibly can. Stop watching TV. Stop drinking the alcohol. Once in a while is okay. Stay away from all that bad stuff. Stay away from negativity. Stay away from the news. Start working out. There's a lot of tips there, but it's all. But as a guy that interviews a lot of people out there that have these big deals and they're very successful at what they're doing, there is a common trait in that they take care of their body, they take care of their mind, and everything else just seems to fall into place. It just does. And they have a positive outlook. They study and they train every day, not just the real estate stuff, which is important to stay sharp, but also human psychology is huge. Sure. And emotional intelligence, huge. Those two things, the ability to talk to people, to engage with people, not be a jerk to people, stuff like that, often overrated. It's everything. This is everything.
Agostino, I knew this was going to be an awesome show. I was excited for it. I knew you were just going to bring it today, and you surely did. So thanks so much for coming on the show. We truly appreciate you sharing all this with the audience. It was just incredible. So for that said, to all the listeners, what's the best place to find you? Tell us where they can find the podcast and the best way for them to connect.
Yeah, bulletproofcashflow.com. Go there. We have a lot of material out there as well. Of course, we're also on iTunes, Stitcher. We're on Facebook as well. We're on every social media platform, really, and all the popular casting sites as well. So we're just about everywhere. So even if you just Google Bulletproof Cashflow, you'll find us. We're going to be switching to a 5-day-a-week show as well. So
Incredible.
There's going to be a lot of new content coming out, and we have a bunch of other new stuff too to really help people really kick off their career in this business. I mean, they're
so cool.
Man, I'll tell you what, as a guy that's been doing this for years, I did the whole IT thing. I started numerous businesses. There is not one single thing that can outdo multifamily. This is the best thing I could find.
Absolutely incredible. Appreciate it. I'm really psyched to meet. Agostino is going to be out here for our workshop October 12th. He's coming out to beautiful New Jersey, which they call the Florida of the Northeast.
That's right.
As I've been told. So going to just share all this awesome wisdom with the audience. So of course, it's multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com. Super excited to have you. Super excited to meet in person. Have a great day.
Ooh.